Hello and welcome to another review on BitTech. Today I've got a laptop sent very kindly by PCSpecialist. Unlike the chair review, I haven't looked at their website at all, so I've got no preconceptions about what exactly I'm getting. I don't even know the specs of the laptop. So let's get this opened up and see exactly what they've sent us. Right, so it's double box, which is good. There was a slight dent in the top. I was slightly concerned, but we have a box within a box and some additional padding to keep it safe. Make sure you get it in one piece, which is nice to see. It's not an excessive box size either. Amazon should take note. This laptop out first. So I've got some foam for protection, then it's in a plastic bag, and then looks like the screen is protected with a cloth bag. We'll just put that to one side for a sec and see what else we get. So we've got welcome booklet, a couple of screws, maybe for additional hard drives, drivers and user manual, maybe a quick guide. Oh. And we have the power brick. Just power cable, everything. Okay. Whoops. So let's have a look at this laptop then. Well, that's quite nice. Well, that feels like that might be a metal cover on the top there. It's got a nice cold metallic feel to it, nice sleek black, and it's got a slightly matte finish to it, so it's not an absolute fingerprint magnet like the shiny ones. Let's open it up and see what we've got. So we've got screen, webcam, what's that, about 13 inches I think, and the keyboard, so that feels like a membrane scissor switch type affair, but it's got a nice bump to it, like it has a sort of tactile-ish feel to it. Doesn't feel too bad. We've got trackpad, mouse buttons, nice big trackpad there. So it looks like we've got a Core i7 and an NVIDIA RTX inside. Also a Sound Blaster sound card. So that'll be fun to have a look at. Got power button up there. Let's have a look what else we've got in store. Oh, the inside around the keyboard also has that metallic cover on it, but the bottom feels a bit more like, just put this down. Yeah, it's a bit more kind of that cheap rough plastic you get, but it's underneath. Who's going to see that? Doesn't really matter. We've got nice ventilation over the two fans. We've got two speakers, it looks like there. Is there any other ventilation? Bit more ventilation there and there. Maybe. Right, then we have a nice big exhaust on the side. Looks like that will get a lot of air through. Then we have a USB 3, USB 2, both type A, a microphone and headphone, which are separate, which is nice. Then we have the USB 3 type A and a USB 3 type C, and an SD card reader and another exhaust port. Again, pretty wide, hopefully. That should do well in sort of thermal properties. Again, two more exhausts out the back there, so it looks like airflow is going to be not a problem with the laptop. Then on the back we've got possibly mini display port, is that? HDMI, Ethernet and power. And a small battery. Let's have a look and see. Lithium ion battery pack, 14.4 volts, 48.96 watt hours. And we'll do a battery test, leave it running overnight and see exactly how long you can get out of that battery. So let's get this charged up and turn on and see exactly what we've got inside them. So we've got to finish off the Windows setup when it first boots up. No, Cortana, you are not here to help us, you are here to annoy us. We'll fast forward this bit. Right, so the first thing, once I've got into Windows, is something called BullGuard has popped up in the notifications area saying optimizing your PC. BullGuard is analyzing your system to optimize performance. So I'll have to let that do its thing and look into exactly what that's doing and why it's there. And it looks like BullGuard is antivirus. Most of which, funnily enough, is bull. Way! One of the problems when you leave a PC at that stage or set it at that stage for a new user is it's then got to download a load of different things. That's always annoying, is you want to play with it as soon as you get it out of the box. Now you can skip the step where you add in an account and then in the instructions inform people how to set that up to their Microsoft account if they already have one. I want to keep that existing one, so it might be better to get it all set up and leave instructions on how to do that rather than leave the laptop to install things once you've got your details in there. So besides the BullGuard antivirus software, looks like they haven't installed really anything else that you'd consider bloatware. They've got 3D Mark and PC Mark 10, so you can benchmark your laptop when you get it and see how the specs you've chosen compare to other systems. And they've also got on here Control Center 3.0, which looks to be to set up different power modes. FlexiKey, let's have a look what that is. So that looks to be setting up macros for your keyboard, then the LED controls, and then finally we've got fan speed control. So besides the usual tosh that Windows 10 insists that you install, it really doesn't look as though there's anything been installed by PCSpecialist that isn't specifically for the function of the hardware.
Windows 98!
It's all functional software and drivers for the hardware in the laptop. That's really good to see. So hopefully there shouldn't be a load of stuff going on in the background affecting any scores, and we'll do some benchmarks to see exactly what this system can do. So here's the full spec list for this laptop. It's a 15.6 inch Elimina model, and it has a 144Hz 1080p panel. Inside is an Intel i7 11800H 8-core 16-thread CPU, 16GB of DDR4 at 2933, an RTX 3050 Ti 4GB, a PCSpecialist branded 1TB M.2 NVMe drive, 2-channel high-definition Sound Blaster Cinema 6 sound, Gigabit LAN, Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5, an integrated memory card reader, a 1MP webcam. This model came with Windows 10 Home, a 90-day BullGuard antivirus license, and a 3-year standard warranty which covers 1 month collect and return costs, 1 year parts, and 3 years labour. As this is the first laptop to run through our gauntlet of benchmarks, there's little to no point in putting graphs up yet. but I have tried to find some comparison points from desktop parts so you get an idea of the level of performance this laptop is giving. So starting with Cinebench R23, it scored 11,237, which is about equivalent to an 11600K or 5600X. And it scored 1507 on the single threaded benchmark, which is a better score than the 10900K even, although slightly below the 11600K and 5600X. Next up is 7-zip, that's version 19, and it scored an average of 71,057 MIPS, 63K in compression and 97K in decompression. Again, this is around similar performance to an 11600K. Next up we have TimeSpy, where it scored 6,156. This is practically the same score I got on my old rig, which had a slightly overclocked 7700K and a 980 Ti. Now that system scored 6,141, but in the breakdown of this score you can see where those big generational leaps have occurred, with the CPU score of the 11800H being 9,876, where it was only 5,795 on the 7700K, with the 980 Ti getting a bit of a better graphics score than the 3050 Ti. But it's still pretty close for such a gap in performance tier, although the 980 Ti is getting a bit long in the tooth nowadays. Next up is the PC Mark X extended test, in which the laptop scored 7,595. Now I ran this same test on my main rig that I do all my editing on, which has a 3700X and a 5700 GPU, whilst it got a slightly higher score of 7,630. In the CPU heavy portions of the test, we can see the laptop actually scored higher than my desktop rig, with the desktop rig making up for it in the gaming performance thanks to a much stronger desktop GPU. Lastly, we test the battery in PC Mark X and doing that on the applications battery test, and the laptop lasted 3 hours and 22 minutes. At the moment that doesn't particularly mean a lot with nothing else to compare that against, so we'll have to wait for a few more laptops to come in to see how well that's performing. Now that's not quite the whole story, because this laptop has 4 different power modes. There is quiet, entertainment, power saving and performance. Now with this laptop being marketed as a gaming and editing laptop, it will of course come in performance mode as standard. Except it didn't. It came in entertainment mode, which I found a very odd choice. There's nothing mentioning different power modes in the quick start guide, or even in their quite substantial welcome booklet. There is just one little line about this in the book, and I've lost my page. If you have ordered a laptop, there is sometimes a piece of software called Control Center or Hotkey. This software can have multiple functionalities, including hotkeys and performing fan control. And that's it. Nothing about different power modes for the laptop, so you could be leaving valuable performance on the table. To test this, I ran the TimeSpy benchmark again in all the different power modes to see what differences we actually got. So the power saver mode got the lowest score of 4,569, then quiet mode with 5,334, which had a lower CPU score than the power saving mode, which was odd, but more on that in a minute. Then the entertainment mode, which scored 6,156, and then performance, which scored 6,451. So there's not actually that much performance left on the table, with just a 5.3% score increase on the GPU side and very little change in the CPU score, just probably run-to-run variance. In the Cinebench multi-threaded benchmark, in performance mode it scored 11,877, which is a 5.7% increase. However, performance mode does significantly decrease the battery life of the laptop, and it only lasted 1 hour and 9 minutes. So they probably use entertainment mode as it's the best balance between performance and longevity of the battery, and it could probably do with a different name, like balanced profile for instance. Interestingly, power saving mode didn't extend the battery life, with it only getting 3 hours and 20 minutes in the PC Mark 10 applications battery test versus 3 hours 22 of entertainment mode. But there was 1% extra left on the battery when it shut down in power saving mode, so they are probably identical for all intents and purposes. One thing this laptop does struggle with is cooling that Tiger Lake 11800H. And it's hardly surprising really, given the core count and the small die area of that new 10nm super thin process. Although it's spec'd as a 45 watt CPU, that's only when the cores are all boosted to 2.3 GHz. When I'm launching the multi-threaded Cinebench benchmark, for instance, I've seen it go up to 4.2 across all the cores and pull 90 watts. Now, it will only do that for a few seconds, but it then normally settles back down to 3.8 across all the cores and pulling about 70 watts. So that's a fair old amount of heat for the small laptop cooler to deal with. You got to remember, you're getting 600K performance from this thing and quite a thin laptop cooler. Interestingly, the quiet mode does more than just reduce the fan speeds. In mixed workloads like the graphics sections of TimeSpy, it allows the CPU to boost higher so that it doesn't bottleneck the GPU. But when it's just under CPU load, like at the end of the test in the CPU portion, it absolutely strips the speed out of the processor, pulling it down to 1.3 GHz across all the cores and only allowing it 15 watts. That's why you can see the CPU score in TimeSpy was so low, and it gets a score that's 40% of stock performance in Cinebench as well. At points during these benchmarks, the CPU was getting thermally throttled on some of the cores, even when the fans had ramped up to full speeds and were putting out a quite impressive 46 decibels. Even if you manually set the fans to 100% fan speed before the benchmark, preempting that CPU load, it would still be unable to sufficiently cool the processor to stop it throttling. PCSpecialist do offer a thermal paste upgrade to Arctic MX4, but it costs a, quite frankly, ridiculous £9. For £9 you can buy an entire tube of MX4, an 8-gram tube at that. That will do you 20 CPU coolers easily, so at least 10 laptops. You know, you're selling high performance laptops and computers, and you should be using high performance thermal paste anyway, let alone charging people 10 times the cost of retail. Would it really make that much difference? Maybe not, but every little helps. And it's the small form factor of a relatively thin laptop that is the real culprit. And there's only so much cooling that you can get from a laptop of this size, and the performance is still pretty decent. There were some things that could have been done better by PCSpecialist on the setup side of things as well. The Windows install and NVIDIA drivers were 3 months old. When I first turned the laptop on, I had to wait an age for Windows to download and install all the updates and restarting all the time. The time zone was also set to Pacific time for some reason, which is just bizarre. They should really include something about the different power profiles, either in the quick start guide or in the welcome booklet, or even just a quick little leaflet that says there is this software, and a Word document on the desktop with all the details of what it does, or a web page on their website, just something to advise people what it is and what it does, and not just leave people to aimlessly click about and try and figure things out for themselves when they might not be able to. The software itself is fairly straightforward, as well as the control center being on the start menu. The individual programs are also listed, which could be good for things like the FlexiKey hotkey software. If you're somebody who uses macros a lot, you can set a shortcut just for that software so you can get to it quickly. In that FlexiKey software, you can set up macros and hotkeys for most of the keys on the keyboard and also the mouse pad as well. It has up to 12 profiles for you to save for all the different programs and games that you might use macros in, and it has its own function shortcut to turn it on or off. It doesn't have a shortcut though for switching between the different profiles, which might have been a nice idea, as it does come up on the screen when you turn it on and off, and it could tell you which profile you're currently on. The LED control is fairly straightforward. There's just 14 colours to choose from, 4 brightness levels, and then off. You can set a boot override, so your chosen colour and brightness will come on immediately on startup, and you can also adjust the amount of times the LEDs will turn off after inactivities, or just disable that function altogether. The fan speed control, that has an option to just set the fans to maximum. You can also do that with the function key and 1, and that will just boost them to maximum if it's getting a bit hot and you want it cooled down. You can also set up your own custom fan profiles for both the CPU and GPU fans independently. It also has a nice feature where you can put an offset onto the existing fan curves, so it just bumps them up a little bit, but this will mean that the fans will kick on to maximum at a lower temperature. You also get that on-screen notification when you turn on or off caps lock, num lock and scroll lock, but there aren't any LEDs to notify you of their status, which might cause you issues if you don't know that you've turned caps lock on and you're putting a password in on a website, getting a bit annoyed because you know you're putting the right one in and there's nothing to show you that caps lock is on. But that's just a minor gripe really. So while there are a few little niggles and there's some setup improvements that could be made by PCSpecialist, both in the software and in the information provided, it's not a bad little laptop. It's got some cracking performance. I mean, even though the CPU is thermally throttling a little bit, you're still getting 11600K or 5600X performance out of a laptop CPU. And that is just amazing, really. The laptop itself doesn't get too grubby, even though I eat quite a bit at my desk. It didn't really get too bad and very easily wiped off. It does feel nice to the touch, and I wasn't sure when first opening the laptop whether it was plastic or metal, but Ralph very kindly product tested it for me and bit on the corner here to reveal it was plastic. Had I ordered the laptop, I would obviously know that, and there are metal cases available on PCSpecialist website, but obviously costing a little more money. The screen is really nice. The colours really pop. It's got very little light bleed to it. The high refresh rate is really nice. You even get a decent bit of sound out the little speakers too. The Sound Blaster Cinema software does a really good job at livening up the sound that they produce, and has different modes for music, TV, films and everything, and it really does impact the sound that they produce, and it opens up the viability of the laptop to be used for watching film and TV with other people. Overall, if I'd bought the laptop, I'd be really happy with it. Hopefully PC Specialist can just tighten up on their setup processes and not rely on the person who's bought it to finish their job. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We've got loads more reviews and mods from Alessandro and Mod of the Month on the way, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of that. If you've enjoyed today's review, give it a thumbs up and comment down below, do you have a laptop? And if so, why did you go for a laptop over a desktop? And would you consider going back? You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter for all the latest news and reviews, links of which will be down below, as well as a link to our Discord server where you can come and talk to us about tech, show us your latest builds or mods, or come and listen to some English people moan about the crappy weather. Down there there's also a link to our merchandise store where you can pick up a sweet t-shirt, cap or hoodie, even a bit tech mug so you can support the channel. So that's it from me and the PC Specialist Elimina laptop. I'll be back soon with another review, so until then, take care everyone, and PC load letter? What the f does that mean? See you then.